And welcome into the second part of my top 10 quarterback rankings. We just recorded the 10 through 6, so go check that out if you haven't seen it already. This is the 1 through 5, so you want to make sure you stay tuned. Maybe you want to get one of these guys in your fantasy football team if you want to win some games. We have Jeff and Will from media. Thanks for joining me, guys. How are we doing tonight?
Good, man.
Yeah, we got some exciting guys to talk about. To start off the top 5 here is a guy who is controversial, a guy with a new system, same team, but he lost his two big name weapons. Bringing in a run heavy team, and that's Justin Herbert with the Los Angeles Chargers. I think when we're looking at Justin Herbert, it's definitely the riskiest of my top 5. But I think his rushing numbers are going to come up in the Greg Roman offense. I think we'll see Justin Herbert use his legs a little bit more. I think we'll see him set career highs in rushing attempts, rushing yards, and possibly rushing touchdowns. I project this offense to score points, even though it's going to come a little bit differently than what we've seen in the previous, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams on the outside. I still think this is going to be a productive offense. We've seen Greg Roman offenses. They're always productive, even though the passing volume is a little bit less. So we're going to have to see Herbert cut down on he's been slinging the ball his first few seasons in the NFL. Now he's going to have to do more, be more efficient on the less attempts. And I think he's going to be able to do that this year. I like Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnston, can be that deep threat. Joshua Palmer, I think, is really going to be the guy that's going to be good for this team this year. You look at the backfield, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Kamani Vidal. They should be able to run the ball. And then they do have two good tight ends in Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst, who they brought in. They already had Donald Parham. So you look at this team that's going to be running a lot of two tight end sets. They have three good tight ends. I think that, like I said, his passing, I have him for 387 completions. So that's less than his previous games where he's finished all 17 games. He was at 477, 443. So that number is going to come down a little bit. The yardage, obviously, is a 4,700, 5,000 yards. I got that down at 42. The touchdowns, I think, will be around 29 passing touchdowns, but I really think it comes out to his 400 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns, I think, is what helps him, elevates him to be a top 5 quarterback. He's in the same tier as quarterbacks 5 through 8 for me in my ranking. Go check out the previous show to find out who those were. But I think Justin Herbert, it is definitely a risk, but it's a risk where right now he's going to be like the quarterback 15 off the board in your fantasy football drafts. And if you can get that, maybe he's not even your number 1 quarterback because you are a little bit, worried going into the season. But I think come the end of the season, if he's healthy, I think this offense could really surprise some people, and that'll be on the back of Justin Herbert running the ball a little bit more. Jeff, what do you think about Justin Herbert? You think he will run the ball a little bit more in this offense?
I'm scared.
That's fair.
Herbert and him running the ball, I'm scared. I want Justin Herbert throwing the ball, not necessarily running the ball. And, it's kind of like we were talking about earlier with having a back like the Eagles getting Saquon Barkley, to where now they're getting in the red zone closer to the goal line. You got a big back to give that ball to. And I think that's why they made the wise choice of getting somebody like Gus Edwards that's used to doing that. So that's the only thing I'm wondering about, him actually running that ball in there. And then, he's been kind of on a decline, a little bit of a regression from that year. He just really set the league on fire. And now you take away Keenan Allen. Mike Williams was always hurt anyway, so it really helped. But I'm hoping Ladd McConkey can kind of fill the Keenan Allen role. I don't trust Quentin Johnston to catch my child if they dropped out of a burning building. He dropped way too many passes last year. So that's the only thing I'm looking at. I would feel more comfortable. I think you're right. You're going to be able to get him in the later rounds, and it could pay dividends for you. But I'm just a little bit afraid because I don't know if I see him running the ball into the end zone, and I'm still left with questions like, who is he going to throw the ball to? Josh Palmer, he's had his chances as well with Mike Williams being to show up. So I'm just a little like, it's another one of those things where I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a boom or bust situation right now.
Yeah, I think you look back, you talked about his breakout year where he finished as the quarterback 2. He had 5,000 yards, but that was his most productive season on the ground. He had 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. So I think that's what Harbaugh is going to bring him back to, is running the ball, because that's what they like to do. Look at, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he is a good athlete. Right. And I think that's what we see from Justin Herbert in this offense this year, that Greg Roman will run the ball. But that's going to come on the back of, you're going to see play action is going to be very good for this team. And if the ball's on the 1 yard line, it's going to Gus Edwards. But if it's a play action, Justin Herbert scrambling outside, he's going to have that flexibility to run. And the play action should work pretty well when you have Gus Edwards down there, who's had 13 touchdowns last year. Will, what do you think of Justin Herbert?
I just don't know. I mean, the Chargers are going to win. Harbaugh is, wherever he goes, he's not losing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know what that means for fantasy. Like, I think Herbert ends up being this 10 to 15 ranked fantasy quarterback every year, puts up good numbers, does really well non-fantasy, right? But I'm just a little concerned based on Harbaugh.
If the rushing work isn't there for him, then I definitely think he'll be outside the top 10. But I'm projecting the rushing work to come. But if it doesn't, it's risky. He's the riskiest of the 5 guys that are in the top 5 for sure. But you got to call your shots every once in a while. And this is a shot I think is going to happen for Justin Herbert this year. The rushing yard should come. And we're talking about Greg Roman, former Ravens OC. Perfect transition to Lamar Jackson being my quarterback 4. I think he looked good last year. He had 3,600 yards, finished as the quarterback 4. He had 3,600 yards, 24 passing touchdowns, and 800 yards on the ground, 5 rushing touchdowns. I have him probably similar amounts. The passing work might come up a little bit. The rushing work might come down. Second year of Tom Monken's system. But even if that happens, I think quarterback 4 is definitely within his range of outcomes. If the passing goes up and the rushing doesn't come down, it could be quarterback 2, quarterback 1 possibilities. He's definitely got that upside to finish as the quarterback 1. And you're going to be able to get him in drafts probably right around that quarterback 3 to 5 range. So if you believe in Lamar Jackson, he's certainly not going to let you down unless he gets injured. That rushing floor is always there for him. I definitely think he's less risky than Justin Herbert. When it comes to what you got in Lamar Jackson, if he's on the field, he's scoring you fantasy points. Are you guys both comfortable with Lamar Jackson repeating as a quarterback 4?
Yep.
Yeah, not quite as much to talk about with Lamar Jackson. No. We do have a little bit more to talk about with the next guy, though, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, what's happening with Rashee Rice? Is Xavier Worthy good? Is he going to be able to do what they need him to do? Is Travis Kelce, has he lost it? Is he going to be too focused on his relationship this year? There are a lot of questions around Patrick Mahomes, who finished last year as the quarterback 8, coming off of his quarterback 1 season in 2022. I think Patrick Mahomes will do a little bit better than last year. I think this is a team that's going to be a little bit more balanced by the way of they have a good running back now in Isaiah Pacheco, and I think they realize that, and they're going to utilize that a little bit more. I have Mahomes for 4,700 yards, so that is a big upgrade. I think with Hollywood Brown, the addition of him, Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, if he misses half the season, that's definitely going to hurt. But we don't know what's happening with that right now. I'm projecting about 6 games missed. That's my estimate. Could be a little bit higher because there was 2 incidents in the offseason, but we do not know. So I think their yards will come up a little bit. Touchdowns, you should see some positive regression. 27 touchdowns is his lowest since 2019. So that should come back up a little bit. Interceptions was at an all-time high last year. Bring that down a little bit. The rushing work last year was at a career high. We'll see if that continues. He had 389 rushing yards, which is kind of what I expect Justin Herbert to be this year. So if that stays around the same, maybe he didn't have a rushing touchdown last year, though. So that's the funny part, is he had the most rushing yards he's ever had in his career, the fewest rushing touchdowns he ever had in his career. So give him a couple more rushing touchdowns. He'll find his way into that top 5. And I think if Xavier Worthy looks all right, he can get a couple deep balls, which is something that, MVS was always dropping. Kadarius Toney was never able to do anything. So just give him a couple weapons and just a healthy Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes is safe. He's amazing when the ball is in his hands. You love watching him play if you have him as your fantasy quarterback. Are you guys both okay with Patrick Mahomes and the weapons he has, or are you a little nervous with the Rashee Rice suspension looming, or you think he's good to go?
I think he's good to go. I mean, he's proved it. He is receiver proof, or so I think Xavier Worthy will be catching by the time. I mean, people forget they're showing all these things about him dropping the ball in camp. I remember Jamar Chase had the same issue.
Yeah.
And me not draft him when I had the opportunity. Not saying he's going to be Jamar Chase, but I'm just saying those things, we know that the kid can catch the ball. And I honestly think that they're holding on to Kadarius Toney for some reason as well. Just in case the guy does have some talent. So
hanging on to Sky Moore too.
Yeah, that's true.
That guy's got some talent.
I have yet to see that talent from Sky Moore, but I have seen it from Kadarius Toney. So, and I think this is the first time Toney is finding himself that he's going to have to produce or he's not going to be on the roster. So, that's a big thing to watch as well. So,
Will, what do you think about Patrick Mahomes?
It's Patrick Mahomes. What else can you think? Shit. It's Patrick Mahomes.
Would he be in your top 3?
Yeah.
Jeff, you feel the
same? Until proven otherwise, yeah.
There we go. Now let's talk about this next guy who really shocked everyone last year. CJ Stroud is my quarterback 2. I know that's high compared to what a lot of other people think. A lot of people saw some of the inconsistencies last year, but I fully believe CJ Stroud with 3 wide receiver 1s on this team with Stefon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. They're going to run the ball. They have Joe Mixon now. Great. But you know what Joe Mixon is also great at? Catching the ball out of the backfield. This is CJ Stroud's team. They're going to throw the ball, and it's not even like CJ Stroud's going to have to do too much. He's always going to have a guy open. They're going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. They're going to have Dalton Schultz as the tight end, Joe Mixon out of the backfield. He's going to have 5 legit receiving options on the field almost at all times, and that's just going to be great for him. You're looking at a guy who had 4,100 passing yards as a rookie, 23 touchdowns. Touchdowns are always down. Touchdown percentages for rookies historically are down. Second year, we could see a Justin Herbert type leap where he gets close to that 5,000 yards through the air this year. I think that's within the range of possibilities for CJ Stroud. The rushing yards, obviously, they're not going to be there for him. He's not, a high rushing guy like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, some guys who I do have ranked below him. But every once in a while, you'll see these pocket passing quarterbacks when they get up to, 4,500 plus yards and into that 30 plus passing touchdown range. They finish in the top 2. And that's where I have CJ Stroud. I have him for 4,700 yards, 37 touchdowns. And I think that's really easy. All the middle of the field is going to be open for him. That's where he excelled last year, in that 10 to 19 yard range. And that's where these wide receivers are going to thrive, with a healthy Tank Dell for the entire season, Nico Collins, who they just paid, and Stefon Diggs, who needs to come out and earn his next contract, which is huge. They just paid Dalton Schultz. They just paid Joe Mixon. This offense is ready to boom, and that'll be on the back of CJ Stroud. Are you guys good with CJ Stroud being a top 2 without that rushing upside?
I think the rushing upside can still come. Look, how are you going to defend this team?
Yeah,
that will open lanes for him. And if he starts becoming a running threat too,
yeah, he doesn't even have to be a rushing threat. Like, they're not going to run read options or anything.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes had almost 400 yards, and I would have to imagine 99% of that was on scrambles. where everyone was running the other way because the defense was too focused on having to try and guard everybody. And this is a team with more talent in the receiving core.
Deepest wide receiver room in the league.
Yeah, exactly. You got John Mechie, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, who I didn't even mention. That's 6 wide receivers who can contribute. And you look at the tight end room, too. You have Dalton Schultz, Brevin Jordan, and Cade Stover, who they just drafted. Brevin Jordan was a beast in college. And Cade Stover, they just drafted in the 3rd or 4th round, I believe. So this is a team. Joe Mixon, their rushing game is probably their weakest aspect. But that's good for CJ Stroud. He should see the attempts and the completions that'll come with that. Jeff, what do you think about CJ Stroud?
There's 2 other factors as well. He's playing in the AFC South, and I think the defense is going to take a step forward as well to keep the ball or keep giving him the ball back. So he's got a lot of upside, man. So I'm not mad at him being in that position, and I think he's shown that the game has slowed down. He reminds me of Jordan Love, but in a I'd say not weak, but it is a weak defensively division.
Yeah.
But in that's truly his, that he actually took those steps forward before Jordan Love did. So he's further ahead. And now to give him somebody, it's just his wide receiver core is ridiculous right now. So
if the way that everyone talks about the Packers' young wide receiver core, if they all hit that way, then they will almost be as good as this current wide receiving core that he has. Like everyone's talking up, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs. You got everyone over there, Watson in Green Bay. If they all hit to be what everyone wants them to be, they still won't be what this wide receiver core is at this moment. And so I think CJ Stroud is an easy path to take another step forward from his 4,100-yard rookie season. And that leaves us with 1 quarterback left, Josh Allen. Josh Allen's in an interesting situation here where he lost Stefon Diggs, but they have now added a Mahomes-esque type of receiving core where it's not just going to be one guy. They have the tight end, Dalton Kincaid, who will probably be the leading target on this team. That's what I predict. He has Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, MVS, realistically not going to do too much. He'll probably get, a deep touchdown. Maybe he'll be a Gabe Davis-esque player. But this is an offense where, sure, the receiving game for them is not going to be great, but Josh Allen on the ground. This team has shown that they don't want James Cook to run the ball anywhere near the goal line. So there you go. There's Josh Allen I have him for 11 rushing touchdowns this season. That could very well be on the lower end because this offense is still going to score. The James Cook is going to be great between the 20s. I think he's going to take a step forward with Joe Brady, who, as a Panthers fan, not great to have Joe Brady calling your plays. But I think with Josh Allen's rushing upside and the fact that this team is still going to be able to throw the ball, I love Curtis Samuel. Keon Coleman, I'm not sold on, but I don't think he can be worse than Gabe Davis. So when you take that into account, you're losing Stefon Diggs. At the end of last season, Stefon Diggs was not great anyways.
No.
But I think Allen is still a safe guy with a high rushing floor and a guy who, look at his history, finished as the QB1 last year with Diggs disappointing for the second half of the year. QB2 the year before that, QB1, QB8. So he's got a high floor, a high ceiling, and he's been super consistent if you go back and look through his game logs. He doesn't have too many down games. So to me, Josh Allen, I have him scoring 5 more fantasy points than CJ Stroud. What do you guys think? Will, you were shaking your head. You nervous?
I just don't feel good about Buffalo this season. I think they're a team that regresses, and it's hard. It's hard to stay at the level like that consistently, and they're losing players. Honestly, I think if they're being honest, the Bills would say they're kind of in a rebuilding season. And, I think their wide receivers will look completely different next year after this season. And
Keon Coleman will be there. They signed Curtis Samuel to a 3-year deal. MVS probably won't be there. Chase
There.
Claypool probably won't be there. Shakir will probably be there, but again,
I
they'll have to bring someone in.
It'll be interesting to see the trade market going near the end of training camp.
Mhm.
Like, does Houston really keep all 6 receivers, and then would they trade Mechie to Buffalo, or will they try to move him out of conference? It'll be really interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of wide receiver movements. I think the Bills will be a team that's looking to pick up like a wide receiver 2.
Mm-hmm.
Something's gonna happen.
Yeah, they could definitely be in the market for a wide receiver, and if they get that, that just helps Josh.
Then that makes me feel better. I just worry that there's not enough there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, I'm high on Curtis Samuel. I loved him since he came into the league. He was great in Washington. He was earning targets over Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. Like I said, Keon Coleman, I don't think he can be worse than Gabe Davis. So he's at least a deep threat guy. Khalil Shakir was okay, but I think when we're looking at Dalton Kincaid is really where the consistency is going to come from this receiving core. Even though he is that tight end, I think I have him projected for 82 receptions, over 800 yards is what I got Dalton Kincaid for. And that's with 6 touchdowns. So if that can happen, I think Josh Allen will be just fine. He's safe, high upside, high floor. And maybe I don't love drafting quarterbacks super high in my draft, so he probably won't be on too many of my teams personally. But if you are one of those guys, I think Allen will be all right. Jeff, what do you think before we end this show?
Let me just say this. Josh Allen is not Patrick Mahomes, meaning I don't think Josh Allen can do what Patrick Mahomes does with less. And to me, honestly, that's what he's facing right now. If you go back and look at the years, even though he kind of regressed during the second half of last year, best years, Stefon Diggs was the guy. I could force the ball to Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs is going to catch the ball, which made defenses roll over to him, which also led Gabe Davis to be open. Other guys to be open to go ahead. And that's why you're finding Gabe Davis with 4 touchdown games sometimes, because everything was shifted over to Stefon Diggs. Now we have no idea who that guy is. Everybody can say Shakir, but he came on a little bit last season, but he's just not that. There's nobody yet. Kincaid could become that guy, but there's nobody yet that he can force the ball to down the field. And that's where I don't think he's going to be able to get that connection with Dalton Kincaid yet, because when he needed to force it down the field, Diggs was the guy that he forced it to. And then what does that leave him to do? To try to do too much running the ball, which, Zach, sooner or later leads to an injury. Although I will say for the last couple of years, I've been like, he's going to get hurt. He still hasn't.
He's smart about his scrambling.
Sometimes, but now when you're forced to be the man and put everything on your shoulders, that's the only thing I'm worried about, because it's not like you have a power run, with you do have Frank Gore Jr., I guess, and there was somebody else they grabbed as well. Maybe you can try them, but they're usually expecting him to be that guy that drags people into the end zone. It's a dangerous thing right now. So that's the only thing I don't know. If he's going to be able to stay at that number 1 position this year with so many questions in the receiver group that he has.
Yeah, you notice he doesn't have like that one person to push the ball to try and force it to. I think that might be able to help him when it comes to his interception numbers. They should be able to come down because he's not trying to force it to anyone. We've seen some quarterbacks where they have one guy and they always look at him, hyper focus, and that ends up leading to interceptions. What we saw when he was targeting Stefon Diggs. If he can, spread the ball out. If I look at what I project reception total, so I told you Kincaid for 82. I have Samuel for 61. James Cook, 3rd on the team with 55.
Yeah.
And then
that's who's going to benefit the most.
I have Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir both with 53. So if they spread the ball like I project him to, get everybody involved, I think he'll be all right. If he does try and just focus on feeding the ball to Keon Coleman or feeding the ball to Curtis Samuel or Khalil Shakir down the field, I think they will run into issues because none of those guys are those big time separators like Stefon Diggs was. So we'll see how the offense runs, but if it runs through all of these guys with Dalton Kincaid being the number one target and then funnel down from there, they should be okay. With that being said, Joe Brady's in charge, so who knows? But that is my top 10 rankings with Jeff and Will's critiques. So make sure you go check out, like I said, 10 and 6 if you didn't already. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. We got the media app coming out. It's going to be great. You guys are definitely going to want to be a part of that this upcoming season. So you don't want to miss out on that. But that is it for this show. Thanks, Jeff and Will, for joining me. See you next time. We'll be doing running backs.
Ooh.
Love it.